One comment on LinkedIn that I saw said this is like promoting the iceberg that hit the Titanic to Captain, which I thought was funny.
Damn.
But what do you think here?
That owns. Hello and welcome back to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show all about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEVs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEVs. On this week's show, how EV startups like Lucid and Rivian are dealing with the Trump era, what we expect from Ford's Model T moment next week, and Tesla awarded Elon Musk a $30 billion pay package so that he'll stay focused on the company for the next 2 years. But first, Patrick, I've been thinking that I kind of need a little bit of incentive to stay at InsideEVs for the next 2 years. I think $30 billion should do the trick. Do I go to you for that, or is there somebody else I should ask?
The problem is that I'm just not as focused as $30 billion would make me as well. I think that's really enough to get both of us just really dialed in, laser
Oh my
focused on
God,
what we need to do. And you know what the
dude, I
thing
would
is? We'd be a
be
package
so
deal.
focused.
I'll take 15 billion, you take the other 15 billion. Like I could stretch that. I could make that work, you know.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Shall we?
I mean, it's how much does one yacht cost? I don't even know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it then. Also hilariously, it's like I have sweated through this entire summer on the podcast, and now it appears to be your turn. So for anyone watching this instead of listening to it, it's Tim's turn to be struggling with air conditioning, airflows, windows, and heat waves. It
Yeah.
seems.
Think about how many air conditioners I could buy with that amount of money, dude. We would both be so cold.
Yeah. Take that, climate. All right, let's get into it. So pretty much every car company out there has been hit one way or another by the Trump administration's newfound love of tariffs, and its shifting policies around electrification and fuel economy and emissions, if you want to put it politely. But there's a different sort of chaos in mind for the EV startups that are just trying to get off the ground. Tim, Lucid and Rivian both reported their earnings this week. You covered both those events. Tell me about how those two companies are doing right now.
Yeah. So broadly, both of these companies posted big losses in the second quarter. And that's not that surprising given their performance before that, given that these are both companies that are still very much building scale, hoping to chart a path to profitability. They're still in these early stages where they're just not selling enough volume of vehicles to make up for the cost of developing these cars, the fixed
Yeah.
costs of running factories, which are huge. Sometimes we call this bridging the valley of death, right? The EV startup valley of death of like, how do you start making enough revenue to start covering your costs? And that just comes from selling more cars. So neither of them are profitable yet. And this quarter, executive from both companies talked about how the fallout from Trump's policies impacted them in the last quarter and will continue to do that throughout the year.
Yeah, Valley of Death. It's pretty metal, folks, which is cool. But like I said, what's interesting about the current tariff environment, if you want to call it interesting, it's not just like these smaller companies that are hit. It's everybody is getting nailed right now. And like kind of the sort of like the general thinking with tariffs is that it's a good for American manufacturers like Lucid and Rivian and General Motors and Ford, and not so good for the foreign ones. But because of the fact that these are global supply chains, parts come from everywhere, especially EV parts, like it's complicated, it's bad for everybody. General Motors posted a $1.1 billion tariff hit in Q2 of this year. Just this week, Honda announced that its profits dropped 50% year over year, which is real nasty. And then, Mercedes is getting hit pretty hard too. One number that really stood out to me recently, Ford makes 77% of its cars in the United States, and it still expects tariffs to cost it $2 billion this year. And it's like you read that and like it's not your job or my job, Tim, to like defend car companies we cover, but I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, fam, like almost 80% of your cars you're making in this country already, and now you're getting nailed the $2 billion in tariffs. Like nobody's doing great at the current moment. I think the difference is that these smaller EV startups, like anything that pushes their break even point, like you said, further into the future, is really bad news for them right now.
Yeah.
So let's start with Rivian. What stuck out to you about their earnings call this week?
Yeah, there were a few things. So Rivian said that supply chain issues, partially driven by tariffs, constrained its production in Q2 and led to a negative gross margin for the first time in 3 quarters. Rivian's CEO and founder, RJ Scaringe, elaborated on that. He told CNBC that the one big problem in particular was the availability of these Chinese rare earth magnets, which are key to building EV motors. Yeah, as a reminder, China has really extensive control of that market. And in response to Trump's trade war, it restricted exports of rare earth metals, which has been a problem for a lot of automakers, not just EV startups, because those rare earth magnets, they don't just go into EV motors, they go into all sorts of other components, like the motors that move your seats forward and backward. It was just kind of pandemonium there for a couple of months. It seems like the automakers have kind of gotten past it. Some of these restrictions have maybe been relaxed a little bit. But it was kind of looking like semiconductor crisis 2.0, if you remember what happened during the pandemic when like car companies just could not get their hands on this very crucial component, and it just, ruined their production for a little while there.
Yeah, those rare earth magnets are go into like literally everything that moves, like on your vehicle, stuff in your home. So when they hit those with tariffs, just like everything was impacted. And you seem to have some information about what's going to happen with the price of cars. Like there's the automakers' bottom lines that we talk about here, like what's going to happen with these EV companies of the future. But like now we're getting into what's a customer going to pay differently than they were going to do before.
Yeah, I think we still don't exactly know. I mean, obviously all the data that we've seen, the estimates we've seen say that these costs are going to go up for automakers, which means that prices eventually will go up. So far, I mean, to deviate from Rivian for a little bit, like GM took $1 billion hit to profits from the tariffs, which means that it is eating some of those costs. It's not passing everything onto consumers. But so Rivian on the earnings call said that tariffs will increase its costs for the R1S and R1T by a couple $1,000s each this year, reiterating what it said before. And then this was a big one. In terms of the policy stuff, this was one that really stuck out to me. Rivian's CFO said that it doesn't expect any more revenue from selling regulatory credits. And as a reminder, the Republicans' big budget bill, we've talked about this, got rid of penalties for not meeting fuel economy rules. The EPA is getting rid of its emissions rules. And so car companies that pollute excessively, that don't sell enough clean cars to meet these requirements, they no longer have an incentive to buy these credits, these offsets from EV makers like Tesla and Rivian, which have historically made like hundreds of millions of dollars doing this. And so as a result of that, Rivian said it expects to lose an extra few $100 million this year. It lowered its earnings guidance for the rest of this year.
Yeah, credit revenue is well into the billions for Tesla over the years it's operated. So this is a huge windfall they're losing. All right, so like, what about Lucid? We know its big mission this year is to ramp up production of the Gravity, which is its second model, the SUV, which seems like really, really promising so far. Its first kind of real mainstream vehicle, since Americans don't really bother with sedans anymore. How's things going at Lucid, Tim?
Yeah, so again, magnets are the problem again.
And we haven't once on this podcast done a magnets how do they work pun. So I don't know where you want to throw that in, or if I should just if I've just gotten it out of the way, but like I was thinking it. So magnets, Tim, how do they work?
Exactly.
Right.
Everybody's wondering it.
Everyone's no one knows. Yeah. Lucid had a magnet problem too. Sorry.
Yeah, Lucid's CEO was pretty frank here. He said on the earnings call that we are not where we want to be with Gravity production. And so, ramping up production of a new vehicle, especially for a startup, has always been a complicated and trying process. So it's possible Lucid's working through some other issues here. I mean, remember the days of Model 3 production hell is what it was called when Tesla was ramping up that mainstream model. It's just like really complicated and hard to build a new car, especially if you're a company that's not Toyota, hasn't like done new models, 1,000 times for the last like 75 years. This stuff is really hard.
Even then, like I'm sort of
Mhm.
racking my brain trying to think of like a new EV platform where like everything was sunshine and rainbows from the get go, and it's like
Right.
Volvo's had problems with that. Toyota even had problems with that. General Motors had a lot of problems with that. Like everybody, no matter how big you are, when you're ramping up this new technology, like it is a pain at first, and like this for Lucid, this pain comes at like a really difficult time.
Right. And so Lucid's official line here is that it was some supplier issues with capacity and that it was also this magnet thing. For what it's worth, Lucid's CEO said that they have secured enough magnets to finish out their production goals for 2025. He expects Gravity production to increase significantly in the back half of the year. Um, but Lucid still expects to produce potentially fewer vehicles this year than it initially planned. 18 to 20,000 is the new guidance, down from 20,000 units.
And again, even as an American car company building cars in America, Lucid's still getting hit with tariffs,
Mhm.
right?
Right. And so Lucid did say that it's getting squeezed by higher tariff costs, that those were offsetting some of the other gains they made in their business. But it's also getting hit by tariffs in a kind of more unexpected and more interesting way. So an analyst asked the Lucid CEO basically, what's the status of these supplier deals you guys have been talking about? Lucid is this real leader in EV technology. It's said over the years, over the last several earnings calls, that it's working on deals to sell or license its technology to other automakers. It already has a deal with Aston Martin to provide EV powertrains.
Mm.
Um, and Peter Rawlinson, Lucid's former longtime CEO, he told me in an interview not too long ago that Lucid wants to someday get around 80% of its revenue from basically being a supplier and 20% from being a car company. And so what Lucid's new interim CEO said was basically that those conversations are still happening, but automakers have other problems right now. He was like,
Yeah.
it's slower because these companies are dealing with tariffs. They're dealing with all these other problems. And so like, effectively striking a deal with Lucid to buy our stuff is not top priority. So
Right. Yeah,
another way they're getting hit here.
you don't need super advanced high efficiency electric motors if fewer people are buying EVs without tax credits, and you're getting hammered by tariffs on every other end. So like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And
Mhm.
speaking of the tax credit, we haven't really even gone to that and how that is going to impact sales. In some ways, it's like these companies might be some of the most vulnerable to those changing tax credit policies because they can't just like pivot to making good old profitable gas trucks the way Ford and GM can, right?
Right, exactly. And that's what we've seen some of these other companies do. Lucid, Rivian, like Tesla, they've got to stick to their guns and just push forward the EV stuff. Even as some of
Yeah.
these other ones are like, we can maybe skew production a little more to these like highly profitable V8, trucks or whatever. And to your point about the EV tax credit, there's one really exciting EV startup that we haven't talked about yet because they don't have earnings. They have not, they haven't built any cars yet, but that's Slate, the EV startup that's backed by Jeff Bezos, and is trying to build this, super affordable, super bare bones EV truck. And they're going to get hit particularly hard by the end of this EV tax credit on September 30th because that was a huge part of their value proposition, as we've talked about, right? Like their whole marketing push was like, we're building an EV that'll cost you under $20,000 after, asterisks after federal incentives. Now
Right.
those federal incentives are gone. What does that mean for Slate? What does that mean for kind of the marketability of this super basic truck?
Yeah. All right, Tim. So, I'm hearing all this news and, I want to just kind of burn my house down, get in my car, just keep driving. Just keep driving until I end up somewhere else and I change my name and I start over. Which I've done before, as you know, we've discussed this. But
You're
before I
gonna
do
you're you're
that,
gonna go Don Draper on me.
yeah, this I do this every couple times every decade or so. Keeps things fresh. But before I do that, do we have any good news out of the space and the EV startups?
Yeah, I'll leave you with maybe one positive note for these startups. So RJ Scorange, Rivian CEO, said that yeah, the regulatory credit thing, this is rough. This means lower revenue going forward. But the end of these regulations also means, according to him, that these incumbents will be less incentivized to invest in new EVs, and that
Yeah.
means less competition for Rivian's future products over the next few years. And I think that's maybe a little bit of a silver lining for Rivian and Lucid, right? That maybe by the time like they're both working on these kind of next generation, really mainstream EVs that are supposed to come out for Rivian, it's middle of next year. For Lucid, it's more like the end of next year, maybe beginning of 27. The R2 for Rivian, and then this mid-size crossover for Lucid. Like maybe those will have less really great competition to battle with if you have all these regulations and tariffs or I should say the rollback of regulations, the addition of tariffs, making this whole EV project harder for the incumbents.
Yeah, and I just add two of these companies, Lucid and Rivian, have some really deep pocketed, excellent
Hmm.
long term partners here. Rivian has got this like multi-billion-dollar software deal with the Volkswagen Group because it knows it's way behind on that stuff, and it knows, like everybody else does, like we can sort of repivot to gas for a little bit in America, but long term we've got to get software-defined electric vehicles right, and they're fire hosing money at Rivian to help them get there. And then
Right.
Lucid is majority
Up
owned
to
by
up
the
to $5.8 billion in total.
yeah, it's a lot of money. And then Lucid obviously is owned by majority owned by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. And that's about as deep pocketed as you get. And that fund and the kingdom are obviously like really really kind of bullish on like energy storage, energy solutions long term. So I don't think either of those partners would be like, they will run out of patience like any investor. But like for now, I think if this is kind of like the valley point until they get to the mainstream, like they could probably coast on that better than others. Slate, I don't know. I mean, like it's backed by Jeff Bezos, and he's got a lot of money. He also just they're divorced, so I don't know what his bank account looks like, but we'll see. It's like it's a good time to have like a good wealthy dad in this business, and that might get these companies through some tough times.
Yeah, it makes me think about, and this is just totally me speculating, but like we've had a lot of EV startup bankruptcies in the last year or two. Fisker, Lordstown, Canoe, Nikola. I'm sure there are others that I can't remember. It makes me think like even if they did get to this moment, like they would have all just been like crushed by tariffs and all this uncertainty, I'm sure.
Yeah. God, I didn't think about that. R.I.P. to Canoe, man. I love that crazy van thing. It's such a great
Yeah.
design. Somebody should have bought that. Meanwhile, the electric vehicle competition is still coming, and from a lot of different corners. Here's another story that we're actually really excited about. A lot of folks believe right now that the so-called traditional automakers, the Detroit Three, they're going to use this moment to just double down on gas trucks like they're always doing. But the fact is, they all have like long-term electric vehicle plans, and they might be pushing them back a little bit, but they're still doing them. And on Monday, we're going to be hearing about one of the most exciting plans on that front yet. So Ford is going to have some very big news for us on the EV front on Monday.
Right. That morning at the Louisville assembly plant in Kentucky, Ford is going to unveil what CEO Jim Farley calls a breakthrough electric vehicle and platform made here in the US. And they're pulling out the big guns when it comes to how they are talking about this event. Farley is calling this a Model T moment for Ford.
Yeah, I love that because like that's like the big guns. Like there's been Mustangs over the years, there's been Broncos, there's been all kinds of historic nameplates used, but like they don't mess with Model T unless they mean it. Like that is the big deal. And I that's a car that probably doesn't need an introduction, but just in case we're talking about not the first car like many people think, and not even Ford's first car like many people think, but the world's first mass produced vehicle, the first assembly line vehicle, the one that kind of got the world motoring the way that it is today. And Ford says they've got a Model T moment coming again, and this time it's electric.
Yeah, it's super exciting. What do we know about this thing, Patrick?
That's the fun part, Tim. Not a whole hell of a lot, actually. The rumors suggest that this is probably going to be some kind of electric pickup truck which makes sense because this is Ford we're talking about, and that's still their bread and butter. And there's actually two ways I think this can go. We know that Ford has created what it calls the Skunk Works project out in Long Beach, California. And its goal is to create a brand new from the ground up EV platform that's going to be used on a lot of different vehicles, including a mid-sized truck and a compact SUV. And whatever comes from that Project Skunk Works platform, it's going to be purpose built as an electric car and super affordable and high tech with first rate software. Like, this is really Ford's shot at going after the Chinese automakers and Tesla. So this thing's a really big deal. And if they're talking about making it affordable, like, let's talk about what that means in this context, because a Mustang Mach-E starts at almost 40 grand, and the F-150 Lightning truck starts at almost $55,000. That's before any discounts or tax incentives might be coming their way. So whatever Project Skunkworks is, it's going to be a lot cheaper than that.
Yeah, and I'll add for the F-150 Lightning, like the $55,000, that doesn't get you the one you want. Like the one
Yeah.
you want, the one with the bigger battery and everything, it's more like, I don't have it in front of me, it's more like 75 or something. So
Yeah.
like the electric truck thing, they and no other company has really figured out how to make that like an appealing price point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I've never seen one that's 55 grand ever. They're like 65, 70, 80, 90. The fun part is you could get one used for like a song. So just keep that in mind. 'Cause I love that truck, but you probably shouldn't buy one new. So that's what we think is coming Monday. But there's also another EV project Ford has coming called the Ford T3 project. And this has been described as a second generation electric pickup truck, full size. And so they don't call it that, but what that means is it's probably a Lightning successor of some kind. But that truck is supposed to be made in Tennessee, not Kentucky. So my money here is on the Skunkworks project, which we've been hearing about for over a year now. And we'll know more from reporter Suvrod Kotari at InsideEVs. He's being sent to Louisville to check out this program, interview some Ford executives, and we sent him a shopping list of bourbon to come back with too. So big week for Suvrod.
Yeah, they haven't said what if it's going to be the Skunkworks project, if it's going to be T3. I think Skunkworks is kind of the more exciting proposition just because it's just
Totally.
like brand new, ground up. It's kind of Ford's like, moonshot to like jump ahead of the competition. So tell us why the Skunkworks project is such a big deal.
Yeah, this is really cool, actually. So news of this project came out last year when Jim Farley just kind of like casually mentioned it on an earnings call. He was like, there's this secret team we have out of California, um, building a low cost EV platform. And it's full of veterans from like Tesla and Rivian and Lucid, and other companies, including one called Automotive Power, AMP. I don't expect you all to know what that means, but it's an energy management startup that Ford acquired last year. And the idea with this team was that it could be like a mini startup within Ford, like starting with a clean sheet design, just from zero to make a car that can compete with China and Tesla. Um, and we know that Ford has been studying some of its toughest competitors pretty extensively by now, and so like one assumes that a lot of learnings from that stuff is going to be going into this car, right, Tim?
Right. Yeah. Farley has been very upfront, I think more so than most of these traditional auto executives about how far ahead Chinese automakers are on EVs, how hard it is to beat them. And so, he's really positioning this platform as an answer to that, as like, how do we Ford, with 100 years of great, 100 years of experience building combustion engines and then like kind of still figuring EVs out, like, how do we battle against these Chinese companies that are eating up our market share all over the
Yeah.
world and potentially coming to America?
Yeah, and none of them will ever admit this publicly, but like they all assume that a day will come when you have the likes of BYD selling in America. And Farley like has intimated, he's like, I work at a company that got like its lunch eaten by Toyota and Hyundai and Honda. He's like, we will not survive if the Chinese brands make an incursion into the United States, like not in our current state. So I that's actually one of the reasons I like Jim Farley, because he's really candid about that. Also worth noting, like, Ford got really ahead on EVs at like the beginning of this decade. Like Mach-E's excellent, still is excellent. Lightning didn't quite take off as much as they wanted, but it's still like, depending on how like the Cybertruck is doing that quarter, it's still like America's best-selling EV pickup truck. And
Hmm.
for whatever flaws it has, it's actually really excellent, I think. But both of those cars are built on a gas car platform, like a gas car platform that has been adapted to run on battery power. And the Skunk Works project is going to give us EVs that are built from the ground up to be electric. Like that is all they've ever been. And history tells us like that allows a lot of innovations in packaging and range and technology, because you're not sort of like you're building a new house, you're not renovating an old one, which anybody who's lived it either kind of knows there's advantages to going new. um
And cost savings.
and cost savings too. But and Ford's got to figure
Yeah.
this out, because it after Lightning and Mach-E and also the E-Transit van, it hasn't really done a whole lot in the last few years. So if it doesn't start rolling out more models and getting ahead and getting costs down, like I think there is a chance it will just be a gas truck company someday, like another John Deere or something like that. So yeah, a pretty high stakes. Tim, what do you want to see from Ford on Monday?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, like, I would love to see a mock-up, a design, a concept car that tells us like what is actually happening. Um, I think it would also be cool just to get like they talked about, this is them unveiling their EV plans. I think it would be cool to just get some visibility into like, okay, you have Skunk Works, you have T3,
Yeah.
you've talked about this affordable model, you've talked about how the future is affordable, smaller EVs, and then like commercial big trucks EVs. Like I would love to just see like what's the plan for the next like throughout this decade, because right now, like you said, it's the Mach-E, the Lightning, and the van, and like what's coming next. They've only kind of talked about it in general terms. It would be cool to
Yeah.
know how much is it going to cost? Like how are you getting all these cost savings? Can you present like a real argument for why these new cars will take it to China and will take it to BYD?
Yeah, and I really hope affordable isn't. It starts at $38,000, and we're hoping a Democrat will get elected someday to bring back tax
Yeah.
credits. Like I want to see something that's like really like actually competitive on its own merits and cheap enough. So we'll see how that goes. Um, and until BYD and the rest of the Chinese brands come to America, Tesla's still the big game in town. And it had some big news this past week too, right, Tim?
Yeah, Tesla's board has announced a massive new pay package for Elon Musk, aimed at keeping him in a quote senior leadership role at the company for at least the next 2 years. And as a reminder, Musk's last pay package, which was worth upwards of $50 billion, was blocked by a Delaware judge after a shareholder lawsuit.
Man, I love this for Elon. This is great. And yes, that was sarcasm. So what is in the comp package here, Tim?
It's your standard boilerplate stuff all of us are used to. 6% 401k match, commuter benefits, and 96 million shares in the company, worth around $30 billion as of market close on Wednesday. That would take his stake in the company to over 15%, worth $150 billion at today's valuation. That is, if he sticks around for 2 years and holds the stock for 5.
Yeah, just I mean, objectively speaking, that's an unholy amount of money. So yeah, it's you seem to have some context for just how much money that is, right?
Yeah, it's that is more than half of the entire market cap of General Motors. It is
Jesus
the
Christ.
largest CEO pay package in history by a wide margin. And the board says that that's not even all of it. They're kind of positioning this as like a down payment to keep Elon around. They call this a first step, an interim award, as it continues to appeal that bigger package and hopefully get that for him. They do say that if they're successful in getting that 50 plus $billion package back, he doesn't get this one. So he doesn't get both.
Well, that's good. It's good they've exercised some fiscal restraint.
Yeah, I mean 70 billion, that would be outrageous. Um so Tesla's board argues that this is what's necessary for quote energizing and focusing Elon on Tesla so he can propel Tesla into its next era of growth. The board cited in a letter to shareholders the quote ever intensifying AI talent war, which They are right about that. We've seen AI researchers get paid $100 million and up. And they've also noted Tesla's position at a quote critical inflection point. So this is why Elon deserves the roughly $30 billion. I mean, what do you think about this, Patrick? Just given all of Tesla's problems right now, this ridiculously huge sum. I saw one comment on LinkedIn that I saw said this is like promoting the iceberg that hit the Titanic to captain, which I thought was funny.
Damn.
But what do you think here?
That owns. No, before we talk about Elon specifically, like, I think it's really interesting how you brought up AI, because I do think that like this does have shades of like what Meta is doing right now. Like Mark Zuckerberg is personally like backing up a dump truck full of cash and Bitcoin to like AI superstars at other tech companies. Like Meta just raised this, ungodly sum of money to also like make this AI dream team. So like that shows you how bullish investors are in artificial intelligence, and with XAI and Grok and what he's trying to integrate into his cars, like clearly, Musk has his eye on that, and he's he was a co-founder at OpenAI at first, like so he was a pioneer in this space in his own right too, and I think that like the AI stuff is a big part of this evaluation. Which would be like the explanation if we lived in like the normal world and not like the insane hell universe we find ourselves in, Tim, because like it's a lot of faith to put in Musk after the last year. And I just it's funny. I got an email from a lovely reader who's like, you pull your punches too much on the Trump stuff, and then I get emails from other ones who call me like a communist and a partisan hack, and someone who gets too political here. But like look at what Musk did. Like he did not have to do this big foray into politics. He did not have to conceive and then head up Doge. He did not need to be like the principal financier of Donald Trump. And he did not need to get into an insane flame war on the internet with Donald Trump. Like it's any way you want to look at Musk, like he has had this like self-inflicted series of wounds over the last year that have hurt Tesla, that have hurt its market share. I think it's hurt its ability to like conceive of new car products. It's hurt its standing in the world. It's hurt it's how it's viewed in the auto industry, and in some ways, it may have even hurt the EV space. All the stuff that he did that he didn't have to do, but in spite of all that, this is the investors and the Tesla board saying this is the guy. He's the only guy. He's genius, and he has carried us this far, and he's made us a lot of money, and we're just gonna like triple down on this dude, and that's an unbelievable leap of faith after everything, because like I feel like if any number of like pick one Musk crisis since pedo guy, and like that CEO would be on his ass, his or her ass. Like what dude went to a Coldplay concert with a lady who wasn't his wife, and that was it for him. And like Elon Musk does stuff like that like every 5 minutes of his day, of his waking hours, and yet he's just delivered so much value, and so much of the promise of Tesla is wrapped up in him personally, that like that's what this award, this pay package reflects. So yeah.
I think that's well said. I think it's like there's Tesla the stock and there's Tesla the company, and they are two very different things.
Yeah.
And Elon has been, you can't doubt that he's been extremely good for Tesla the stock, right? Like
right.
he has figured out how to tap into the brain of like Wall Street and Wall Street analysts and prove to them why Tesla should be worth $1 trillion right now, giving it like one of the biggest price to earnings ratios like on the whole stock market, right? And so you can see why shareholders, why the board is super happy about that. They want to keep him around. Like maybe that's a cynical view, but like Robin Denholm, the chair of the Tesla board, who also was part of this like 2-person compensation committee they put together to dole out this award. The Times had this analysis of her stock sales, and as of May, over the last 6 months, she had sold around $200 million in Tesla stock that she had been awarded because of being a board chair. So like, yeah, these shareholders, the board, they want to keep him around because he's been very good for their wallets. On the other hand, you have the Tesla business. Like the car business is flailing, revenue's down. The Cybertruck has proved to be pretty much a total bust. There is no game-changing, smaller car or cheaper car in the pipeline. It's all robo-taxi, which is an unproven project.
Yeah.
Nobody knows when or if that can actually like be a meaningful business for Tesla. And yeah, like you said, Elon Musk has brought down the image of this company. So yeah, so it's kind of, I think it's kind of weird timing at best to be throwing all this money at him to keep him around, even as the board acknowledges that his attention is divided between Tesla and a bunch of other pursuits, right? SpaceX, Neuralink, and whatever else he has going on.
And this also is reflective of how much, like, especially since the bailouts, Wall Street doesn't really like traditional car companies. Like, ask anybody who's an investor in General Motors and if they're like happy with the stock price that GM has, and they'll say hell no. And investors look at car companies, like you're this big lumbering dinosaur. You've got this like giant capital intensive business with a lot of overhead. It's very cyclical. It's very sensitive to economic ups and downs, gas price up and downs, like everything we talked about in this podcast. But like
Yeah.
investors care about the future. And it's like, if you're the guy that can like take us from like selling trucks that people finance and own for 7 or 8 or 15 years to like autonomous pods that they pay for over time that drive themselves, and maybe also you license the technology out to pods that fly someday or whatever, like it's like Jetson stuff, you know what I mean? Like that's what they're excited about. They're not excited about like good quarter at Ford, bad quarter at GM. Like that's just kind of business as usual. It's like this is a bet on Musk delivering what is perceived to be the future. And we'll see if he can. It's also worth noting that like, it sounds great on paper to bet on robotaxis and autonomy, but like this is a really contentious field. It's had a lot of legal challenges as of late. A lot of regulatory investigations and safety investigations and maybe more now coming too. Last week, a Florida jury found Tesla's Autopilot system to be partly liable for a fatal crash that happened in 2019 and ordered Tesla to pay $243 million in damages. And a lot of attorneys, when that happened, said this is going to open the floodgates for more Autopilot-related lawsuits, and that's starting to happen in different ways. Like this week, Tesla got hit with a class action lawsuit alleging that it overstated the capabilities of its robotaxi technology. So, there was one kind of theory, like when he was real tight with Trump, that like the Trump administration would be able to make some of those, federal regulator investigations go away. I don't know if that's the case anymore now, obviously, because since they're on the outs, but like he's still got like lawsuits to deal with, and the robotaxi, full self-driving technology, whatever you want to call it, is still far from proven and, provable.
Right. I mean, and I guess that'll be, where I'll leave it is like that will determine whether this was a good investment or not. Like, I don't know. Can any one person, can any one CEO, even if it's Elon Musk, be worth $30 billion to a company? I'm no compensation expert. I don't know. That seems like an extraordinary amount of money.
I mean, if you offered it to us, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally us, but no one
If
else.
it's for super, super extra good podcasters, then yes, obviously.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
But the robotaxi thing will determine it, right? Like this has been a long, long time coming. Tesla just started this kind of pilot program in Austin. It's also doing now ride hailing with a safety driver in the driver's seat in the Bay Area. So like if Tesla can do what it is promising and become like this gigantic robotaxi company, like maybe that brings some really high compensation into view. If it's just kind of goes along being like a sort of middling auto company with volumes that are sort of middle of the pack, not so much.
And once again, it's a shame. Like I said, I drove that new Model Y, the Juniper, a few weeks ago, and I really, really liked that car. And it was kind of painful because I'm like, when this company wants to make EVs, like Cybertruck accepted. I didn't love that. But like, when Tesla wants to make EVs, like they're really good at it, and it's like, oh, we're not really doing that anymore. We're doing robots and autonomy because that's where the stock price money is. So we'll see. All right, now it's time for Plus Minus, our segment where we talk about who's up and who's down in the EV world this week. Tim, what you got for me?
I have a plus, and this is an interesting one. This week, GM announced that a group of engineers decided to see how far they could drive a Silverado EV if they optimized basically everything about the test for range, right? They pumped up the tires to their maximum pressure. They added a bed cover for aerodynamics. They lowered the windshield wipers for aerodynamics. They didn't use climate control at all, and they drove at around 20 or 25 miles per hour whenever possible. This was done on public roads and not on a test track. And they managed to go 1,059 miles over 7 days of driving, which GM says is the new record for EV range on a single charge. That beat out Lucid's recent Guinness World Record last month, which involved a Lucid Air GT driving 749 miles across Europe. So,
Yeah, take that, Europeans.
yeah, this is like a really big number with a lot of caveats. I mean, 1,000 miles is insane compared to this. The Silverado EV work truck has an EPA rating of 493 miles, so they managed to get more than double out of it. What do you think about this? This is like, it's an interesting test.
I think that I would not want to have been one of the engineers who was tapped for that. I don't know if those folks like lost a bet or just like what happened, but like my heart goes out to it. It's like, that's a remarkable achievement and real commitment to your job. But it's like, okay, we're drive this thing, at school zone speeds for a week with the air conditioning off, and it's like July, August. Like, that is commitment to your job, folks. That is, the state of Michigan needs to give those folks a medal or whatever it does. But I think the really interesting thing here too was like the tactics involved by these engineers are kind of stuff that anybody could do if they needed to maximize range. Like, it's like not good or easy stuff, but like in a pinch, if you had to, it's like, using the bed
Drive
cover,
slower.
drive slower. Yeah, for sure. Like, just like we found that anytime you're going over 70 miles an hour in EV, you start to shred range like crazy. That's just a physics thing. So go slow down. Hey, modify your tire pressure a little bit, though. I think there's a safety component I'd be wary of there. Turn off your climate control if you have to. I've kind of done that in the winters when I've been like kind of really need to make sure I seal the deal. Like there are things that they could do here to show that, you could get a lot more range than is stated on the label. So and good on GM for proving that. But I'm glad it was them, not me,
I'm like torn. I mean, I think it can be, you can learn some lessons from this. Like, yeah, drive a little slower, whatever. I kind of think about like the average, car buyer, the average American, like who the hell wants to do any of that? Like I really do think that
Yeah.
I really do think that for EVs to really like gain a foothold among mainstream consumers, like it can't be, oh, you can get enough range if you just like drive 50 miles an hour
If
instead
you're
of
just
60.
miserable all of the
Like, come
time.
on. Like nobody, like realistically, everybody wants to get into one of these and do everything they already do, which is like speed on the highway, not be like hypermiling around town, like rolling up to stoplights, coasting. They just want to drive. And so like
Yeah.
that's what's ultimately gonna have to happen.
Yeah, it's a wacky one. I got a minus this week, and it is unfortunately Volvo, which is a phenomenal car company, but it's in a pretty bad way lately. Second quarter results, Volvo posted a $1 billion operating loss, as well as its fifth
Yikes.
consecutive drop in global sales. So Volvo's kind of spiraling right now, which is sad to see. And, why'd this happen? And it's a couple things. America's a really important market for Volvo, and it's getting hit with tariffs here because it's a pretty import-heavy car company. Then you have the fact that, like, two of its most exciting and promising electric vehicle models have really not panned out. There was the EX30, which was supposed to be like 35 grand and super affordable. Like, I was going to buy one, and then they, decided to make it in China, so it got hit with its double whammy of tariffs, and now it is on sale here, kind of. And the last one I tested was almost 50 grand, and I didn't care for it that much. And I've not really seen many of those on the road at all. I think you've seen a couple out in the Bay Area, the EX30, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're totally MIA on the East Coast. I think they're just going to be pretty.
And importantly, the $35,000 one is just not. It just hasn't been on sale at all.
That's why, like, who the heck would buy that thing? Like, it's a neat car at 35 grand, but like at almost 50, it's just not a good deal. And like, I think the rollout of that is going to be really limited. And then you have the EX90, which they had even bigger hopes for, because that was supposed to be the sort of electric replacement for the famous XC90 crossover. And that car has just been utterly plagued with software problems and bugs and recalls, and it's really just been a bad start for Volvo all around. So that one's a real shame. So okay, between tariffs and these two models failing to launch and just a lot of uncertainty in the market, it's a rough time for Volvo. And again, like, this is a company that I think makes fantastic cars. Like, you buy a modern Volvo, like, I do think you're buying like one of the best cars that money can buy right now, and one of the best looking and one of the safest. But they're having a lot of trouble as, really an import brand that's trying to break into new technology and picking a rough time to do it. So, and I hope they sort it out, because like when Volvo's on, they're really on. They make really fantastic products, but just in a real rough patch in summer 25. Thanks for listening and or watching the Plugged In podcast from InsideEVs. We'll be back next Friday. Today's show was produced by Michael Perkins, and make sure you wish him a happy birthday, folks, because it's his birthday today. And it's also brought to you by the Motorsport Network.
Make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe to the InsideEVs YouTube channel, and tell a friend to tune in. See you next time.